Hi, so here we are in another editing session. This time it's Gaineswood in Demopolis. Gaineswood was an old mansion owned by somebody from the Civil War. The person bought it in 1834, handed down to their daughter. Their daughter lived until she was 97 years old, then handed it over to the state, and it's been a state-run historical site ever since. You may have seen the video that I posted about Gaineswood. Well, this is the pictures taken from that trip. So let's get started. This is really just a picture of the makeup of the house. As you can see, it's actually brick. This is a window. As you can see here, this is a window built into the wall, just showing you what the house was made of. Wood beam structure and brick. Kinda neat, but not really worth developing. General George Gaines, 1784 to 1872. This is the original owner of Gaineswood, and basically what the person it was named after. We'll develop it. It's not exactly a great picture. A lot of pictures I take just more for the story rather than because they're actually great pictures. This one is just the story, the context. What are we? ISO 6400, we're indoors, f2.8, and we're at 1/400th of a second. As you can see, it's a really bright day. From what I can remember, the temperature was up near 90 degrees, basically very hot. Now let's try and bring down. You can see that we're peaking. It's probably going to be here. Let's turn it on and see. It's actually here. This is a good tool. It's your histogram, and through the use of this, which will show you what's basically pure black and's got no information, to this, which is showing you what's pure white and has no information, you can click on these and then adjust your highlight, shadows, etc. in accordance to try and get rid of any clipping that's going on. Now, because it's in this and I'm not really too bothered about that, we'll leave it as be. But obviously if it was more in the center or down, you adjust your highlights or your whites down the way to get rid of clipping at the top, or you increase your shadows if you've got clipping down the bottom, your shadows and blacks, until you no longer get the markers. Do we have any? Okay, so highlights all the way down, we got rid of the marker. I also had to take the exposure down just a tad. Now when I go down to dehaze it, which brings in the colour a lot more and gets rid of some of the brightness, at this point I might need to increase the shadows or the exposure just a tad to compensate. So that's okay, we'll export that one. So this was a marker that was found. There's one room that had 3 columns in it, and they had to remove the columns because they were just basically rotten through, and the state put in a wall instead. In one of the columns they actually found this, which was an historic marker. If you can see, let's see if we can get rid of some of the shadows that are some of the highlights in this. And then, whoa, that's way yellow. That's a bit better. We can zoom in on this. This cap was made by General Nathan B. Whitfield, who was the owner after Gaines, and put together on the 9th day of August of 1854, in the 54th year of his age, being born the 19th of September 1799 at Rockford, Lenoir County, North Carolina, and moved to Marengo County, Alabama in the fall of 1834, and to this place, Gaineswood, February 1843. And this is just a transcribe of this, which is his original handwriting, and was placed basically as a time capsule. The Ionic column, southwest hallway that they had to remove during 1975 restoration, blah 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 blah. And that I told you about. So this is kind of neat. Now I've got another shot of this, and this one might not have, I don't know. This actually might have more reflection than the last one. Now this is where a circular polarizer filter would have came in real handy. I didn't have my bag with me. I had the camera, I had a GoPro, and basically that was my 2 hands full. If I was carrying my bag, which was sitting in the car, I could have got out the polarizing filter, and that would have got rid of these reflections, or at least minimized them to a great extent. So there we go, bring up the shadows a tad. Get a little bit of colour in it, it's bringing in the yellows and the greens. A little bit too much. Let's just put them back to normal. So do I like this one, or do I like this one? Either way, I don't like the reflections on them. So we're not going to do that one. Okay, so this is part of the main living room, or one of the main living rooms. We had a living room, a dining room, another sort of greeting area, another sort of living room type thing, a ladies, what did they call it, a ladies greeting room, a gentleman's greeting room. Oh, wrong slider. We just want some of the colours in this to pop. Bring up the shadows a tad. Dehaze just a smidge, and there we go. That really is what it looked like. Now, this invention here, I don't know if you'll be able to read this. Oh, you can. What setting am I at? F7.1, okay. I can't remember what they called it. Gaineswood, I can... Violins, flute, zither, guitar, flute and bagpipe. This is something that the general actually invented. And it's basically it's a music machine that had rolls. I got a picture somewhere of the rolls that you insert it. You turn this handle here and it played music. Simple as that. Well, not really simple, because back in that day, you know, it took an awful lot of skill, and this was built by hand by the general. The two rooms, this room here and those highlights are blown, as you can see. So remember, if you've got blown highlights like that, you bring down the highlights. We've got rid of them, and you can now get some detail in here. It's better to have shadows than highlights. Shadows actually retain a lot more information than highlights, blown highlights do. Excuse me. But taking that down, the whole thing's become very dark. If we increase the exposure, we bring back the blown areas. So we bring up the shadows. Ever mindful of blowing this out. But it's more the detail around here that I'm wanting to capture. So if the center of this is completely blown out, I'm not that worried about it. There we go, that looks okay. Now this one and the other one, again, is built by hand. These rooms didn't exist. This was originally a dog run, I think they call it, which is basically two rooms with a gap in the middle. And none of this existed. This was all built on. There were 7 phases of development. This is a close-up of music machine. I wonder if we'll be able to read it now. So there's piano. There's piano, violin, flutina, that's what they called it. So it's flutina cylinder, and this is the actual flutina itself. Since we've already got a picture of that, so here's the organ that he played and the violin. And this is a picture of one of his daughters. These two pictures we might be able to photo merge into a panorama. Let's see if this works. And there you go. As you can see, it did actually work out into a panorama. So we get the organ, the daughter. The reason this painting is here is this is the daughter that used to play this piano. That's why that was kind of significant. So let's edit this one. As you can see, we've got highlights. They are on the glass vase here and just up here, so not too bad. Not too bad. We do want to dehaze this. As you can see, it's a little bit... I think I want to dehaze it more than that. Let's bring in some clarity and some contrast, which will bring the colours out a bit. Touch vibrance, get the velvet. Just to crop more shadows, and then this yellow is overpowering, but I can't really put any more blue in there. In fact, let's... I hate to do it, but let's crop that a little bit more. There we go. So now back to where we were, which was here-ish. Here. So there's her picture. This picture of the general, which, yeah, from the angle didn't really turn out. This is the cartridges for the flutina. And as you can see, it's basically just a bunch of nails. The nails hit hammers, which hit strings and produces the music. This was invented and hand built by this general. Bring the highlights down. You can see some detail coming in at the window here. Bring in the clarity. We need some shadows so that we can see into the box a bit more. There we go. Vibrance and saturation. Dehaze it just a tad, so we can get an even better. It's not as blown out as you can see here. Touch more shadow. Good. We'll export that one. This was the family Bible. This is the family Bible. This is the original family Bible from I think 1849, when he moved into the house. Might have even had it before that, since it's a family one. This was a picture of this statue. And I can't remember why I took that. We got told about that, but I can't remember. Another close-up of the Bible. Now, and close-up of the violin. All of this is original back to the 1830s, 1840s. Even when the daughter inherited it, she kept everything that the family had. The only difference to the house was the 3 columns, the 3 pillars that got knocked down and the wall got put in, and they added air conditioning. As you can see here, there's an air conditioning vent, and they got a special company to come in so that it would be hardly noticeable, adding air conditioning. Apart from that, this is everything in here is original back to the 1830s, 1840s. Even down to the floors, these hardwood floors. This was the original hardwood floor of the dog run. This up here never existed. This wall never existed. One room off to the side. Now this was slightly different dog run. I keep saying dog run, but that's not quite the word. It's dog something or other. Dog trot. It's dog trot. That was what they called it. Most dog trots had one room off to this side, and this was open in the middle. This one was a 2-story. So you had a room here. This room up here was original. Room up to the right, room down to the right. This was open. This staircase didn't exist. This wall, etc., didn't exist. To get to the upper one, there was a ladder you had to climb up to get in. And one of the first things that the general done when he bought the dog trot was fill in the walls, get a staircase, and basically make this into an enclosed house rather than a dog trot. So that's why this photograph was taken. As it showed not the before, but the after of. This was the first renovation to the house. As I said, there was 7. This was the first one, was to fill in the dog trot and make it, add the staircase and make it into an actual enclosed house. Oops, come back, I need you. I need my controls. So what do we want to do here? Yes, need it to pop a little bit more. Just a smidge too blue. There we go. Now, do we need to straighten this? Probably, but no, we don't. Straight as an arrow. Export. And yet this one looks straighter. Is that a different focal length? Nope, 24mm, 24mm. Okay, so this one actually, to my eye, this looks straighter, even although you saw me trying to straighten the last one and it was straight. Just to the eye, this looks straighter. So we'll go delete the last one, or not delete it, but not post the last one, and we'll use this one. There we go. There's that picture from earlier of the general that I had the wrong angle on. And just a wider angle view of it. Him in the fireplace. Actually, that's not a bad picture. That's not a bad picture. Highlights, you can see it coming down in the windows. Bring up the shadows to get some detail in, bring in the clarity and the contrast. Contrast basically darkens it, but makes it pop a little bit. I don't think we need to dehaze it that much, although we'll get a little bit more detail in the window frame. It's just a smidge on the dark side. There we go. That's good. And this is the dining room, obviously. Got told something about this centerpiece. The general didn't like the traditional centerpieces of the time, and this one split into two. But then he had nowhere to store it, so he went to a cabinet maker somewhere and got them to specifically build this cabinet to house this. And I was trying to get the skylight. This is the opposite room with the other skylight in it. Here's a much better picture though, taken in the center. So this is the one that we're going to develop. You don't need to develop every photograph that you take, because not all pictures are equal. Develop the ones that either add to your story or just the ones that you like. It's all personal taste. If you don't particularly like a picture, throw it away, move on to the next one. This is digital era. All that a picture costs you is time. You've already got the equipment, you've already got the memory cards, so all it costs you now is time. If you don't like it, move on. I like this. Not entirely sure it's very straight though. Is that better? That's better. Still a smidge too much coming in the windows in the back. There we go, I like this. Export. Basically the same in the middle, but with the skylight. Can't remember who these people are. Tells you there, but at f2.8, of course, since I'm focusing back here, this is blown out. This was actually focused in here on the silverware. This is pure silverware. And same with the butter dish. I assume they had butter back then, but whatever dishes, serving dishes, these were. Staircase to the up. Now this is him with his first wife. She died and he got married again, but this is a picture of the general with his first wife. An extremely old chair, I guess you would call it. Now this is just the music room from a different angle. And that one's straight. So here you got a better picture of the violin and they called it a piano. I'm not sure if it's an actual piano or a harpsichord. I guess by this point they actually had pianos. About there. Bring in some colour. DA is a smidge, we need to increase the shadows. There we go. Are these all at 24mm? Yeah, so I just shifted angles a touch. Got the sofa. Actually, that might be a... This is more focused in on the piano and the violin, whereas this is more focused in on the fireplace and the room in general. Yeah, first one works. MB Whitfield. This is the original door plaque for the General, and this is the original door that it stands on. As I said, virtually everything in this house is original. This was the, this is the double mirror. This is the ladies' greeting room. So when he threw parties, I hate how these places use yellow lights, yellow tinge to everything. I've said that on previous videos, but what can you do? So this is underexposed, probably because there's so much light getting in here. Now bring up that and it's bringing back the yellow, but that's way too much blue. So that's about a decent compromise. We need to bring down the highlights. Now we're getting a blue tinge to that. There's really not a lot we can do about this. The room was yellow to look at. It's purely because of these lamps. Now your eye can, certain wavelengths, your eye, you get used to it because most lights in your house are a yellowish tinge, and to you it just looks like normal light. This room, even to your eye, looked yellow. Smidge on the green. There we go, that's a bit better. So if you got a room that's yellow, reduce the temperature. It's too warm. If you're shooting indoors with normal lights, and these are old lights, but even normal modern day lights, as you can see, it's still yellow. Reduce the temperature, or alternatively set it in your camera. Because I was actually on a tour getting shown around, I didn't have a lot of time to change settings on the camera, so I set a I think I was actually running auto white balance on this, rather than you do have settings built into camera for cloudy days, sunny days. There's the auto white balance. I'm sure there's a few others depending on what your camera is, but like sunny day, nighttime, cloudy day, these are all Nikon, Canon, Sony, doesn't matter. But you can also directly set your temperature in Kelvin if you want to do it that way, which is fine and great if you've got time to do it. If you're getting shown room to room and you're on part of a tour and you don't have a lot of time to take pictures, auto white balance and then correct it in post, just like I'm doing here. This is the men's receiving room, but this is the general's actual bookcase with actual books inside. Books that he used and read, and there's also children's books in here that his children used and read. Now the general had 13, a little bit over the top, right there. The general had 13 children between his 2 wives. Of those 13, 3 or 4, I can't remember which, died of yellow fever, and another one drowned. Straighten it a tad, and then we'll export that one. Yeah, another couch. This is the fireplace, I think. Excuse me. Yeah, this fireplace, marble, and this is a photograph. It really was that dark inside as well, of some famous ship that caught fire on the river that's not far from where this house sits. Not a very good picture. This was the main receiving room. I had 5 people on the tour with me, and here's 3 in the picture. I tried to hang back, and since there was only 5 of us, get the room without people in it, but that wasn't always practical. So we'll go with either this one or this one with the lights off. Lights on, it's not too yellow, we'll go with this one. You still need to bring up the shadows quite a bit in this picture though, and bring down the highlights from the windows. You can see the wooden slats behind it now, they're not completely blown out. Dehaze it a tad, and then we'll... There we go. Perfect. Actually, you can... About there. Export. So here's a room. Chandelier. This wasn't the original chandelier. This was a replacement. The original one, I think he said, ran on kerosene, which produced a lot of soot. This is trying to get a picture of the vis-a-vis mirror. Basically mirrors that are opposite each other, so that if you look in one you get multiple reflections, and I think they said it went up to 13 times, but of course you kind of get in your own way, so it's really hard to count it. I suppose you really need to be on the floor looking upwards in the right position, and you might be able to. I like the decorations on the roof. Remember, this is all done by hand in plaster. It was done by his slaves. The general owned 180, I want to say, slaves, and he had a policy. I think a good policy of whenever he got something. Remember, the house is built in 7 sort of iterations, and whenever he got something built and he had to hire an outside contractor to do it, he would get that contractor to teach one of his slaves, so that then he could do it internally without having to hire outside contractors again. This is you can see the staircase to the upstairs. This is the vis-a-vis mirror reflecting back. Yeah, still don't particularly like it. Okay, now this was the general's bedroom, the master bedroom, I suppose you would call it. Again with the yellow lighting. God, I hate yellow lighting. Corrected. Still a smidge on the yellow side, but there we go. Something about the carvings in the is it this part here or this part here? We go into the other bedroom next. But there's something about the carvings in the bed pillars that denote that this is the master and not the other room. I think it's this part here is not in the other room. We'll see in a second once we get to that picture. Smidge to blue. There we go. Fireplace, and him and his second wife, that was. Although this is filled up with sort of knickknacks, these were portraits of the time, just hand drawings, outlines. This was also used as a bookshelf. The general was an avid reader, apparently. Now this I found interesting. There's a better picture of that, though again it's blue. It's yellow, not blue. It's broad daylight. Why do we need these yellow lamps on? There we go, bring out the details, and you can see the reflections of the general and his second wife. do that, and we're bringing out the yellow again. Okay, we need to bump up shadows a bit more. Bring in some more detail. So we're trying to compensate for the yellow light here, but as you can see from the shutters, we're making the shutters blue rather than black or grey. It's a balancing act. I could really go into the HSL in the colour. In fact, let's just do that. So saturation of this yellow, bring it down. That's how, if you really get a yellow picture and you can't, just do temperature adjustment. You can bring down the saturation and get a much better picture. So now that the saturation of the yellow is down, we can actually bring the color temperature back up a smidge. Get a warmer feeling, but in the right color range. But this was a, what do you call it, a theodolite. This is what he used in actually constructing the house, which was kind of neat. I liked that. Though, as you can see from this picture here, it's not standing straight. So when I take a picture, it's not standing straight. So again, we need to go down to we want effects because we want to dehaze it, but we also want the HSL. Click on here, pick a yellow, and bring the yellow not that far down. There you go, that looks good. Now you can just do the individual sliders. I prefer to actually use this little tool here. Then you can actually place it on the photograph over the color that you want. Just, it's, to my mind, it's easier and quicker. This was the bathroom, believe it or not, and this was a wash tub. This is what they actually used. This was a child's wash tub, not an adult's one. Basically, they sat on the edge here and washed themselves. Now, if an adult sat on the edge of this, it would tip over. But that's what there we go. And this is, again, as with everything else in the house, original. Hairbrush, makeup box, etc. This is the jug and basin, whatever, that they would use to pour over the bathtub. And this is the second bedroom. That's there. So it was something up here that was different between the two beds. And that was how you knew which was the master and which was the guest bedroom. In this case, it was actually one of his children, not a guest. He did have guests over, but they stayed upstairs and not on the main level. Now, what was interesting, I never actually took a picture of it, but for a house of this time, in order to go to the bathroom, you would go outside. You would go to the outhouse. Or use a chamber pot, as you can see here. And then your slave maid, whatever, would empty the chamber pot. The general didn't want his guests, that actually looks good like that. Let's export that. The general didn't want to have his guests get up in the middle of the night, needing a bathroom, and have to go to an outhouse. So he actually built, it was too dark to start with, he actually built an indoor bathroom on the upstairs level for his guests, which for this time period, 1830s, apparently was quite unique. Fireplace, this close up of the combs and whatever, and bathroom mirror, chamber pot under the bed. That's what this was a picture of. Stairs leading upstairs. I suppose they also lead downstairs as well. As you can see here, stairs leading downstairs. Again, this is all original hardwood. This was one of his children's bedrooms. This isn't from this bed, this is from a bed in another room, but again, original. That's an original quilt. These are original blankets from the 1800s that have stayed intact, which is fairly sort of amazing. The original curtains. This is the original painting, and as you can see, over time, probably because of this, they had a leak in the roof at some point. This painting has actually got damaged. Now, all this is out in the open, whereas normal museums, that would be behind plexiglass or something to preserve it. In fact, most of this stuff would be behind some sort of protective covering. Oh, excuse me. That was great. Did I do lens correction? There we go. Bring up the shadows a smidge so we can get the paint in the background, and done. Just a different angle. Again, a different angle, I think. Yeah. And then this was a close-up of this quilt. handmade quilt. This was one of the children's quilt. This was children's bed made by, I want to say it was his first wife for one of his daughters. So yeah, this dates back to the 1830s, 1840s. And that's basically how vibrant the colours were. And it's still intact. It's quite amazing, really. Especially given the humidity and the heat and whatever in the south, that things like this are still there and intact. Child's bed, child's seat. Oh, that's a doll's bed for the doll. So the child had a doll and a trolley, or whatever you call that, and this was the bed for the doll. Although there's a doll in this one, this wasn't a doll's bed, this was actually a child's bed. Bring down the highlight so we can get some detail in here. A little smidge of color. We've got lens profile on. And there we go. Done. This is the sewing machine that was actually used to make the quilt that we saw in the other room. Is this the loom? Can't remember. Spinning machine, they've got a loom actually here, and this is some sort of measuring tool for the thread. And this would run basically 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that they could make their own clothes and quilts and whatever else they needed to make. This was run by his wife and some of the slaves. As you can see, this is cracked with age. Yeah, they had no real way of knowing or measuring all the yarn or whatever, and this was a quick way of doing it. And then it went on to the actual loom. And the tour guide gave figures for this. It was something like 10 hours work spinning and measuring would give them basically 1 hour's worth of loom time to actually make the cloth. Don't quote me on that. This is for memory, but those figures sound about right. The attic. This is a single piece of oak or cedar. Might have been cedar. It's like 30 feet long, 2 feet thick. Is it 30 feet long, a foot thick, and 2 feet high? It spans the entire length of the house. One of the main beams. This was a guest bedroom. Just out the doors to the right here, where the door to the attic was that we saw the beam, is where the indoor bathroom was. And they didn't call it a bathroom, he called it something else that right now I can't actually remember what he called it. It wasn't a convenience, it wasn't a bathroom. Marble fireplace, I assume that's one of his daughters, I can't remember. Another bed. Same bedroom, 2 beds. This one and this one. These were powder and perfume pot type things. Not a very good picture. This is his second wife's dress, or one of her dresses or nightgowns. I think this was an actual dress. And from what I can remember about this, she was absolutely tiny. It's like 4'9" to 5'1", something like that. But apparently people back then weren't very tall. I think the average height nowadays is what, 5'6" to 5'8", somewhere in there. The average height back then was 5 to 5'2". So we've grown a few inches. And that's not including basketball players, by the way. There's that, there's a front of the dress. I think we're fairly much finished. Guest bed. Back downstairs is the main. In the china cabinets we got these. I have a better angle on that. Maybe that one. This is not stained glass but painted glass, and it's offset at an angle, as you can see here, and I can't remember why it was offset at an angle, but there was a story behind that. The can't remember, Zimmer, whatever it was called, loom. And then we go to the outside. So here is Gaineswood in all its glory. We'll take the 2.8 one. How straight are we? Not too bad, not too bad. Now, for my liking, there's way too much grass. So let's cut out some of that, and then let's develop this. that brings in the sky. Lovely graduated sky. Just by dehazing. That's a smidge bright. There we go, that's good. Slightly closer in, slightly closer in again. We'll go for it. I try and get the colours in the picture the way I want it before I play about with exposure if it's underexposed. This is, I mean, we did go down to ISO 200. Bring in the sky. And as you can see from the histogram, it really was underexposed a bit. Three quarters of a stop almost. That's a lot better. This was a statue from the roof of the house, and I can't remember the story as to why it lost its head. Now we want the wider angle, but we do want to straighten this. That's an awful angle. The shadow, so we can try and get the door in the background, which we've got there. Highlights, clarity, so we can see things. Bring in the color a tad. Bring in the sky, like that. And then we have the room to increase the exposure and get a really nice picture. I like this because of the trees. That was all. Just moving around the house. This is a good angle. This was the carriage. I suppose people now would call it like the carport or whatever, but this was for horse-drawn carriages at the time. Remember, there was no cars. And there you have it, a quick editing session of Gaineswood. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something from it. As always, I try and do more than just tell you what I'm doing to the picture. I try and give you some historical context of what the picture is actually about. Try and tell a story about it. After all, it's all about stories. Photographs are about stories. But I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you learned something, and we'll see you in our next editing session.